Hey Reddit, I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My ex-husband and my sister both follow my main, and I just can't deal with them seeing this. I guess I'm posting this because I need to finally tell the story, to get it all out. It was the worst day of my life, but it sparked the beginning of something incredible. But that incredible part, that came way, way later. First, I had to get through the day itself. The day my entire life just ended. It's hard to describe the feeling. It wasn't just sadness or anger. It was deletion. It felt like my whole past, my present, my future, it was all just a lie. I walked into my own home and I saw them. My husband, Mark, and my sister, Sarah, together in our house. The shock, it's a physical thing. Your hearing goes funny. Everything gets quiet and loud at the same time. You just freeze. You see, I could have processed a divorce. People fall out of love. It happens. But this was something else entirely. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a double betrayal. The two most important people in my world, the two people I trusted without question, were a team against me. In one single moment, I realized I was completely, totally alone. Mark and I, we were together for 10 years. 10 years. He wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend. The guy I called about everything. The one who knew how I took my coffee. The one who held me when my grandmother passed. He was dependable, solid. He was the person I was building my entire life with. The one I thought I'd be complaining about in a nursing home one day. We had the house, the shared car, the plan. And then there was Sarah, my sister. She's my little sister, just 2 years younger. We weren't just sisters, we were inseparable. She was my person, my partner in crime, the one I called before Mark. She knew every secret, every dream, every stupid thing I'd ever done. I trusted her with my life, genuinely. Looking back, God, hindsight is a cruel joke, isn't it? There were signs. Of course there were. Little things. Like how they just seemed extra close. I'd come home from work, and they'd be laughing in the kitchen, and the laughter would just stop. Not in a guilty way, just in a way that made me feel like I'd interrupted something. Or how she'd always text him to ask when we were free for dinner, not me. I just brushed it all off. I'd literally tell myself, this is good, this is family. I'm so lucky my husband and my sister get along so well. I was the one making it all work, you see. I had the high-stress job, the one that paid the mortgage on our perfect house. Mark had been finding himself after a layoff for almost a year. And Sarah? Sarah was just Sarah. She was always crashing with us, in between apartments, in between boyfriends, in between jobs. I was so busy supporting everyone else. I never once stopped to think about what they were doing. The worst day started as a good day. I was on a work trip, a really grueling 3-day conference. But I'd finished my presentation early, and my boss, seeing I was exhausted, told me to just catch an earlier flight. I was so excited. I didn't tell Mark or Sarah. I wanted to surprise them. I pictured it. I'd walk in, drop my bags, and we'd all just order pizza and watch a movie. A perfect, normal Friday night. I took an Uber from the airport, beaming. I remember walking up the path to my house, key in hand. The house was quiet. I figured Mark was in his office and Sarah was Well, who knew? I dropped my bags by the door and called out, "Honey, I'm home early." Nothing. I smiled, thinking I'd go scare him. I walked towards our bedroom. The door was closed. Not locked, just closed. And I heard voices. A whisper, and then a laugh. My sister's laugh. My blood went cold. It wasn't instant. My brain literally couldn't make sense of it. I thought, oh, Sarah must be showing him something on her laptop. Maybe she's upset, and he's comforting her. I pushed the door open. They weren't on a laptop. They were in my bed. My bed. I can't describe the scene. Just what you'd expect. Panic. Sheets being pulled up. My first coherent thought wasn't even anger. It was just confusion. I think I actually said, "What are you guys doing? It's cold in here." My brain was trying so hard to find a different reason. Then it all came crashing down. The realization, it hit me so hard, I felt my knees buckle. Mark jumped up, pulling his boxers on, and he started yelling. Not apologizing, yelling. "What the hell are you doing here? You weren't supposed to be home. You weren't supposed to be home." Sarah, she just burst into tears, but not guilty tears. They were angry almost, annoyed. She just sat there, clutching the sheet, screaming, "You've ruined everything." I looked at Mark, my husband of 10 years, and I didn't even recognize him. His face was cold, hard. I whispered, "Mark, please tell me this isn't real." And this is the part I will never, ever forget. He stood there, looked at me, and then he looked at her. He walked over to the bed and put his hand on her shoulder. He chose her, right in front of me. "Look," he said, his voice flat, "it is what it is. We didn't want you to find out like this. He said we. The finality of it was like a door slamming shut. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing. This was a plan. This was their relationship. I just turned around, walked out of the bedroom, picked up my suitcase from the hallway, and walked right back out the front door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I was just empty. It was over. I sat in the Uber I'd called, my suitcase on the seat next to me. I had no idea where to even tell the driver to go. My hand was shaking as I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Mom. And then I just stopped. I couldn't call my parents. You have to understand, Sarah. She's always been the sensitive one. The one my parents coddled. The one they always made excuses for. "Oh, that's just Sarah. She doesn't mean it, honey. You know how she is." I knew with a certainty that made me sick to my stomach what would happen. If I called them hysterical, telling them what I saw, there would be a long silence. And then my mom would say, "Oh, honey, are you sure? Maybe you misunderstood." They would want to keep the peace. They would want a family dinner to talk it through. They would ask me to forgive, to be the bigger person, because breaking up the family would be worse. They would choose her, just like Mark did. In one night, I hadn't just lost my husband and my sister. I had lost my entire family. I was functionally homeless with nowhere to go. The first few weeks are a blur, a really dark, gray, numb blur. I ended up calling my one friend from work, Anna. She didn't ask questions, just gave me her address and left the key under the mat. I slept on her couch for 6 weeks. I've never known a humiliation like it. I was 34 years old, a successful professional, sleeping on a lumpy sofa, owning nothing but what was in my suitcase. I had to get a lawyer. I had to sit in a sterile office and talk about my home. The home I paid the mortgage on. The lawyer, a very practical woman, just looked at me over her glasses and said, "Okay, so he's living in the primary residence with your sister, right?" She said it like it was just another case file. But to me, it felt like the entire world was staring at me, pitying me. I'd see people we knew in the grocery store, and they'd just look away. That quick, awkward, "oh God" look. The word was out. I was the fool, the chump whose husband left her for her own sister. I just shut down. I went to work. I came back to Anna's couch. I ate microwaved dinners. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt nothing, utterly empty. Then one night, I was lying there in the dark. It was probably 3 a.m. I was listening to the sound of the fridge humming, and I had this mental image, just crystal clear. I saw Mark and Sarah in my kitchen making coffee in my coffee pot, laughing, living my life. And I realized they were counting on this. They were counting on me to break, to fall apart, to be so devastated by the betrayal that I would just disappear. I'd be the tragic story they'd tell their friends one day. Oh, it was so sad what happened to her. And this spark just lit up inside me. It wasn't even anger, not really. It was cold. It was pure, simple clarity. No, I will not be the victim in their story. They don't get to win. They don't get to erase me. I paid for that house. I built that life. And if they've taken it, I will just go and build another one. A better one. I sat up on that couch. I wasn't numb anymore. I was awake. I wasn't going to do this for revenge. I was going to do this for me. I refused to let this be the end of my story. The next day, I started making calls. I found an apartment. It was not great. It was a tiny one-bedroom studio over a loud restaurant in a neighborhood I used to avoid. The paint was peeling, and the shower only had 2 temperatures, scalding and ice. But it was mine. The lease was in my name and my name only. That first night, sleeping on an air mattress on the floor, I cried for the first time since it happened. Not for Mark, not for Sarah. I cried for my thread count, for my old couch, for the sheer, overwhelming work it was going to take to just get back to zero. The legal battle was brutal. They lived in the house while I fought for my share of it. My lawyer said we'd probably have to sell. In the meantime, I was burning through my savings just to exist, so I got a second job. On top of my 50-hour-a-week corporate job, I started bartending 3 nights a week at a little dive bar. I'd come home at 2 a.m., smelling like stale beer and fried food, just to wake up at 7 a.m. for a budget meeting. I was exhausted all the time, but every dollar I earned felt solid. It was mine. No one could take it from me. The loneliness was the hardest part. The silence in that tiny apartment was deafening. And then there was facing the world. The awkward encounters. I ran into one of our mutual friends at the bank. She gave me that horrible, pitying head tilt. "Oh, honey," she said, I'm so sad this is happening. But, Mark says there's 2 sides to every..." I just turned and walked away. I didn't even close my account. I just left. I started cutting people out. Not with drama, just silence. If a friend texted me asking to talk, I just didn't reply. The worst, as I expected, was my parents. They finally called me, a month after I'd moved into my new place. My mom did all the talking. She said Sarah was a mess, that she and Mark were so full of regret, and that they were still family. She asked me to come to Sunday dinner, to start the healing. I asked her, my voice very, very quiet, "Mom, did she tell you where I found them?" A long pause. She said you're exaggerating, that you walked in on an emotional moment. I laughed. It was a horrible dry sound. "Okay, Mom." "Honey, please," she begged. "Don't do this. Don't tear this family apart." "I didn't," I said, and the line was so clear. "I'm not the one who did this. You've made your choice." I hung up, and I didn't answer when they called back. That was rock bottom. No husband, no sister, no parents, just me in a tiny apartment working 2 jobs, completely and utterly alone. And if you've ever felt that kind of alone, just you against the world, you know how hard that climb is. By the way, if this story is already hitting close to home, hit that like button. The part that comes next is what changes everything. For about 6 months, my entire life was just work, sleep, work, air mattress. That was it. But the silence in that tiny apartment, it was starting to get to me. It was too loud. I realized I had to be around people, but I couldn't stand the idea of talking to anyone I knew. I couldn't handle the, "So, how are you?" question one more time. I needed anonymity. I needed to be in a room with people who had no idea who I was, who Mark was, who Sarah was. On a whim, I signed up for a community college continuing ed class. It was a basics of woodworking class. 2 nights a week. It sounded physical, focused, something to do with my hands, besides type on a keyboard or pour a beer. The first class, I was terrified. I just stood in the back, hoping no one would talk to me. And that's, of course, where I met Alex. It wasn't romantic. At all. God, no. The last thing I wanted in my life was a man. He was just this guy. He was partnered with me on the first project, a simple bookshelf. He was funny, in a quiet, dorky way. He made a joke about how his measurements were all wrong, and I actually laughed. A real, actual laugh. It felt rusty. He just treated me like a normal person. He didn't know my story. He didn't see me as the tragic woman. I was just the new person in class who seems to know how to use a level. We started talking just during class about the projects, about the wood, about how sawdust gets everywhere. After a few weeks, we started grabbing a coffee at the diner next door after class, both of us covered in sawdust. He'd talk about his job as an architect and the crazy clients he had, and he'd ask me, not about my past, but about my ideas. He'd ask what I thought of a building design, or what I wanted to try and build next. Slowly, patiently, he just included me in the present. He never pried. He never asked why I always looked so tired, or why I flinched when someone mentioned family. He just was a friend. And this new skill, it became an obsession. I wasn't just building a bookshelf. I was building something real and solid and mine. I started sketching designs at my desk at my corporate job. I looked forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays more than anything. One night, we finished our final project, a really complicated, beautiful coffee table. Alex stepped back, looked at it, and said, "Wow, you're really good at this. Seriously. And I realized I was. It was the first time in almost a year that I thought about myself as something other than the woman who got betrayed. I wasn't just a victim. I was a woodworker. I was Alex's friend. I was okay. The romance, that came much, much later. But the friendship, that's what saved me. He was this unexpected anchor, this kind, normal person in the middle of my storm. He didn't try to pull me out of the water. He just sat in the boat with me and we built a table. So it's been 2 years. 2 years since I slept on that air mattress in that tiny, terrible apartment. It's strange to even look back at that person. She felt so broken, so erased. Where am I now? Well, I'm sitting in a living room, drinking coffee. Alex is in the kitchen behind me, arguing with the toaster. In a minute, we're gonna head out to our workshop. The house? It's ours. We bought it 6 months ago. It's small and it needs work, but it's ours. And the workshop, that's the best part. I quit that high-stress corporate job about a year ago. Alex and I, we started our own custom furniture business. It was terrifying. But that woodworking class, it wasn't just a distraction. It was a new path. It turns out I'm really, really good at it. We're not rich, not even close, but our bills are paid, and I wake up every single morning genuinely happy. It's not a perfect life. It's a real one. It's messy, and it's covered in sawdust, and I love it. And that's the biggest victory I mentioned in the beginning. My victory isn't just moving on. It's not that I found a new, better man. My victory is that the betrayal, it forced me to build a life that was 100% authentically mine. The perfect life I had before, it was a lie. I was a supporting character. I was the person paying for everything, the person holding it all together. But I wasn't me. That betrayal, as brutal as it was, it burned all of that away. It forced me to find out who I was when I wasn't being Mark's wife or Sarah's sister. As for them, I hear things. My old friend Anna, the one who gave me her couch, she still runs into Mutual. Well, they're friends. Apparently, Mark and Sarah are miserable. The perfect house had to be sold in the divorce. I got my half. I guess building a life on a foundation of lies and, well, no jobs, it doesn't really work out. I hear they fight constantly. About money, about everything. But the weirdest part is, I don't really care. I don't feel anger. I don't feel sadness. I just don't feel anything for them at all. They're just people I used to know. I realized their betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It wasn't an epilogue of a tragedy. It was the violent, necessary, and perfect beginning of my real one.